In a rare and closely watched meeting on American soil, President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin held high-level talks in Alaska, marking the first U.S.-Russia summit in 4 years. The discussions, described by both leaders as productive and constructive, covered a wide range of issues, most prominently the ongoing war in Ukraine, economic cooperation, and the possibility of resetting strained relations between Washington and Moscow. From the outset, the meeting carried symbolic weight. Alaska, the chosen venue, is not only geographically close to Russia but also historically significant, having been part of the Russian Empire before it sailed to the United States in 1867. President Putin acknowledged this history, reminding his audience of the cultural and strategic ties that still connect the two nations across the Bering Strait. He noted that only a narrow stretch of water separates the Russian and American coasts, with two islands sitting just 4 kilometers apart. "We are, quite literally, neighbors," Putin remarked, stressing the deep-rooted cultural and historical connections that still endure. Putin referenced the Orthodox churches scattered across Alaska, along with more than 700 geographic names of Russian origin. He also evoked memories of World War II, when Alaska served as the launch point for the Alaska-Siberia Air Bridge, a vital but treacherous route by which American aircraft were ferried to the Soviet Union under the Lend-Lease program. "Our pilots risked their lives flying over the vast emptiness of ice, and many paid the ultimate price," he said. "They did it for a common victory, a shared fight against a common enemy." The Russian leader praised the United States for honoring the memory of Soviet pilots buried in Alaska, calling it a noble and worthy gesture. He added that such reminders of past cooperation should inspire present-day leaders to rebuild ties and move away from hostility. Putin openly acknowledged that U.S.-Russia relations have deteriorated to their lowest point since the Cold War. He insisted that such a state of affairs benefits neither side nor the international community. "At some point, confrontation must give way to dialogue," he said, framing the summit as a much-needed reset after years of tension. The two leaders devoted much of their conversation to Ukraine. Putin described the conflict as a tragedy, emphasizing the shared history and cultural roots between Russians and Ukrainians. "We consider Ukrainians to be a brotherly nation," he said, noting that the war has been a painful wound for his country. While expressing Russia's interest in ending the conflict, he stressed that any settlement must address what he called the root causes, including Russia's security concerns and the balance of power in Europe. President Trump, in his remarks, confirmed that Ukraine dominated their talks. He said he intended to brief NATO, President Volodymyr Zelensky, and other allies on the outcomes, but he insisted that progress had been made. "There were many, many points we agreed on," Trump said. "We didn't get there on everything, but we've made real headway. And I think there's a very good chance we'll succeed." Trump reiterated his long-held belief that had he remained in office during 2022, the war would never have broken out. "I know it would not have happened," he said, echoing Putin's own suggestion that his leadership might have prevented the conflict. Both leaders agreed on the urgency of halting the bloodshed, with Trump underscoring the staggering toll of thousands of lives lost each week. Beyond Ukraine, the leaders discussed trade, investment, and cooperation in high technology, space exploration, and the Arctic. Putin highlighted a 20% increase in bilateral trade since Trump's return to office, calling it a promising sign. Both men expressed optimism that U.S. and Russian businesses could expand cooperation further. The symbolism of the location was not lost on either leader. Putin pointed to the international date line, which runs near the U.S.-Russian maritime border, noting that one can literally step from yesterday into tomorrow. He said he hoped that politically, the two nations could also step into a new tomorrow. For his part, Trump praised Putin for his directness and his willingness to engage in dialogue despite past obstacles. He criticized what he called the Russia hoax of previous years, saying it had made cooperation more difficult but not impossible. "He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax," Trump said, referring to investigations into Russian interference in U.S. elections. "But now we can move forward." Trump also hinted at the possibility of visiting Moscow for a future summit, though he acknowledged such a move would stir controversy at home. "I'll get a little heat for that one," he said with a smile. "But it could happen." The tone of the summit stood in stark contrast to years of hostility, sanctions, and mutual suspicion. While no final agreements were signed, both leaders framed the meeting as a turning point. Trump emphasized that the progress made, though incomplete, could lay the foundation for peace in Ukraine and a broader US-Russia rapprochement. Putin echoed this sentiment, calling the talks a starting point for rebuilding pragmatic relations. Both men concluded with a sense of urgency about ending the war in Ukraine. Trump said bluntly, "We're going to stop thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do." As the meeting ended, both leaders expressed hope for continued dialogue and a commitment to keep the channels of communication open. Whether the Alaska summit proves to be a historic breakthrough or simply a symbolic gesture remains to be seen, but for now, it represents the most serious attempt in years to pull two nuclear powers back from the edge of confrontation.